And so now again, always keeping in mind, it is what it is our general form of a solution. This is to that is to this, is our connecting logic that introduces the dynamic limit of connecting the discrete ideas into one new idea, solidarity, two different words with different unique independent definitions, solidarity meaning something new and different using the same words. But what was I going to say? But remember, our physical basis is vibration, right? Mass that me and you are made out of is stabilized vibration that interacts through light. And then the E equals mc squared over the Lorentz contraction, square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared. Just that's your relativistic factor if you've been exposed to actual numerics like the equations. But again, like we've discussed, the logic behind the equations is what matters, not the actual formulation of the equations. But when your equations are wrong, that is the evidence that your logic is inconsistent. But right, just Google right now, what is vibration? And literally the first definition is the state or act of vibrating. Right, so you have a tautology in your definition of something that everybody uses every day. It's literally consolidated. You have a vibrate mode on your phone. And so that's a literal physical proof, right? How many words can you be concise, right? Literally the entirety of consumer electronics, specifically for a cell phone, is how short, how much functionality can you introduce into a cell phone or into a tablet with how few of clicks can you get them to maneuver that functionality. And out of all of the words in the world that you could have picked, you picked vibrate. Well, you didn't pick it. It naturally consolidated to the most efficient. And so, again, our physical basis is vibration, and then the word is obviously vibration. And so, it will relate back to that, and that's our physical basis, our form, it is what it is. This is to that, what that is to this, our connecting logic. Sensorality being our identified specific solution, and how we're trying to scale that back up to generality to extend it out to reach to the next axiom. Getting really close, but again, I really wanted to point out that vibration is defined with tautology right now. But it's, again, everything is defined in generality, so vibration is the connecting thing, right? It's like, again, you can't reduce past a certain limit for any physical system, including language. And so the concept is complete at a certain level, represented by a word. And what most people have done is try to break it down too far, as opposed to build up. But back to the logic, to this, so another very interesting thing I come across, and this was also for speciality, but right, you have sorality, right? We've gone down to orality, but let's keep it at sorality for right now. And so we have sensorality, we have sorality. And so can we find another interesting linguistic piece of evidence for sorality? Right, how about absorption? Right, we used that in the last couple episodes, but absorptionality. Right, you have the word absorb, A-B-S-O-R-B. You have absorbing, A-B-S-O-R-B-I-N-G. Then you have absorption, right? S-A-B-S-O-R-P-T-I-O-N. So why does the B go to the T? And clearly there's like some sort of reflexive symmetry between the B and the P. And so there's some sort of geometric linguistic identity in there. Not sure what it is. Because some of these ideas, again, they're so new that I have to prove all of the elements before I can apply them. But point being is, again, that's some facet of syllability that I just do instinctually. But why? Like, why is it goes from absorb B, absorbing B, absorption P. And then you have absorptionality. And so then you have sorptionality, right? Sorality, sorptionality. And so absorptionality, that base word is sorality. And so now we've identified sorality, which you probably say, what is that? Again, we've talked about how it's sore, but absorption, right? You absorb force, so you're sore. And so we can you see how that logic is consistent. It's not the best definition or the best description of something, but it doesn't you can feel it. I can tell you can feel it. And so something's going on there, but the base of absorptionality, absorption, is sorality, I mean, that is literally where it comes from. And then there's another facet that I do instinctually, but again, where there's some evidence or pattern or algorithmic response or some sort of just evidence with one too many. Right? Any native counting system, if you go find an uncontacted tribe in the jungle, every sort of independent tribe has developed a one too many counting system. Again, the two stabilized dynamics, R1 and R2. R3 is open, unstabilized. So that's the many. But then in linguistics, when the words start with, you go from pictures, writing systems with pictures, to alphabets, letters that represent the sounds. And so there's another intuitive facet that I do, where if a letter starts, or if a word starts with A, B, again, that's 1, 2 in the English alphabet. And there's nothing super specific to English, but it's the language of science, so again, it's becoming more efficient because it's got the right prepositions or something. Something's going on there, obviously. But these underlying rules are provably independent of language, so you could articulate them in any language. But there's something where you go, if you have a word that starts with A, B, you can just chop that off to 1, 2. And really clearly with absorption, right? A, B, and then sorption is clearly the word with sorality. And so there's something there where if a word starts with A and B, it kind of like cancels out or reduces or something. But you're literally putting the words in alphabetical order. And that's literally what I'm doing, and I do it instinctually. So something's cool is going on there, but now physically and intuitively, to absorb is to integrate. If I absorb knowledge, I'm integrating that into my lexicon, into my knowledge, into my intuition, into my understanding. So that's a big linguistical, logical connection there. I have a whole physics episode done. We'll do that next. But now connecting, right? Spelling, right? What is spelling? Well, it is syllabling. Don't know the correct. See how that word feels funny? Right? That's a very blatant one where it feels funny. Now for me, it's just all words just feel a little nuanced in it. But it's as funny as sibling feels to you as how other words feel. All words feel to me if they're used out of the right context. And so, what other words can we use that are short, that start with soar or so? Literally the word so, but sort, sensorality, sorts. All right? Again, trying to get to that form where we can iterate directly by the letters. And it'll be directly shown. Still not there yet, but getting very close. But filtration, sorts. And so we have filtrality, sorality. Logically equivalent. Or at least a bridge. But now so I wanted to introduce, we're going to get to the final results, but again, just putting all of this logic out there. These are all the pieces of empirical linguistical evidence of trying to arrive at our definition. And so now we're going to get to the natural definition discussion. So let's start with a word. We'll start with a piece of evidence, then get to the result. And so what does the word availability mean? Hey man, I'm available. What's your availability? Maybe it's for a job, maybe for trying to get a date, maybe hanging out with your pals or your gals or your friends or whoever. What is availability? Something I'm sure anybody that speaks English can readily define for you in any practical terminology. But let's look at that. Can that word be broken down into two complete words? And it can. If you break it down, you have avail and ability. And so it's not right. If you break those, avail, I'm going to avail someone. It's like it sounds kind of like the same sort of emotional output as avenge. I'm going to avenge my brother's death. I'm going to avail my fallen brother or father, or preserve my house, or I'm going to avail. So there's got a kind of a weird emotional connotation, but it's a complete word. And then you have ability, which is very clearly capacity. Anytime you say ability, you could say the word capacity and it'd be logically interchangeable. But the point being is if you say I'm available, it has a very different meaning than you say I'm going to avail. And so you have availability, right? The ability to avail is logically kind of off of what available means or what people use it for. But the point being is it's literally naturally defined. Availability is the ability to avail. Syllability is the ability to be a syllable. And now see how we can feel that little bit of nuance or difference. Syllability is the ability to be a syllable that's logically consistent except for one thing, to be, right? The word to be is specific to sensorality with an S. Animacy, life, right? To be or not to be, being. It's like the first verb you've learned in any language. And so syllability doesn't have life, right? Life uses syllables. And so there's little, see that our little, we can feel our definition is a little, our logic is exactly backwards, right? That's sensorality with a C containing sensorality with an S, as opposed to sensorality with an S containing sensorality with a C. So we're almost there with syllability. We've got to turn that notch a little bit there. But so we have syllability as our definition, the ability to be a syllable. But then how about for our result is, because last time we talked about lying, right? We have the ability to lie. We started off this episode talking about the ability to lie, in which people are trying to prove if dark energy is real or not. And I'm over here saying, yeah, guys, people can lie. Here's the proof as to why. And so again, I literally do the backing logic for just cliche statements that everyone says. So it's like people spend 100 pages trying to prove 1 + 1 = 2. And it's just the most ridiculously, academia is lying about everything at this point, and they have been for years upon years. But back to our result, meaning they've been lying about the state of engineering, physics, and mathematics and linguistics for at least 8.5 years to a level that's insane. But now, what is a word that we use all the time for responsibility? All right, if you have a liability, right, what do? You have an obligation. You must oblige something, right? Particularly in reference to law. But if someone says, you're a liability, you're a risk, you're a disadvantage, you're a potential risk, you're a potential disadvantage. But what is the word? That is how we functionally use it. That is what it means. Anybody would say that's the meaning or agree to some effect that's what the meaning is. But if you look at the word literally, it's liability, the ability to lie. So how does sensorality? Sensorality is liable. Sensorality has the ability to lie. That rock cannot lie. I can. You can lie. The carpet cannot. And so we have a fundamental differentiation. Again, turning that logic, cranking, but also look at the iteration of the letters of syllability and liability. Again, there's a lot of I's in both of them. There's a Y, a couple Y's. The only one, syllability, has an S besides that. And so again, we're trying to get to two words that directly iterate. They have the same letters, iterates the logic. Again, the definition will present itself. But my point being is we have a natural definition. Nobody could say linguistically and logically that liability means the ability to lie. Preserves the syllability. You're saying the same thing, just in different order. And so if you look it up on Google and it says being the operative word being a responsibility or an obligation or a disadvantage, it's true, but now the question becomes, why is the ability to lie a disadvantage? Why is the ability to lie? Is it a disadvantage? Well, it's a disadvantage sometimes it's an advantage. But again, not assessing any sort of moral component, just literally that question, is lying advantageous? But why do organisms have the ability to lie? Right, so there's a practical application, not just some random philosophical statement. But sensorality has the capacity to lie. And so now we can break that all the way down and just say orality is liable, right? We can even break that down from sensorality to sorality to orality. So we have to remember we have to define our complete basis, which is clearly orality, which is oral, which is by the mouth. If Brad and Jen did oral with Brad's small meat, they just went out to a restaurant and ate some food. Orality is something to do with the mouth, oral. So I don't know what you sick animals were thinking, but you should get your heads out of the gutter. But our final ending point, obviously being serious, but orality is liable. When you vocalize, you have the ability to lie. Not good, not bad, but it's an empirical fact. And it's true. Not that you needed convincing of it, but we're going through the logic and the proofing of it. And so that's what high-level mathematics is really just providing you the reasoning as to why something you already know to be true is true. So thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow with some physics.